Hello everybody, today we are going to be ranking Doctor Who Season 7 and all 4 of its stories. That's right, there are only 4 within this one because 3 of them are 7-part stories, and thus there just aren't as many in this actual season. And before we get started, I do want to say there's probably going to be some mild spoilers in this video. There's not going to be much in terms of substantial things that will really ruin the season for you. But if you don't want to know anything going into this one, then yeah, I'm going to touch on some minor things in terms of the direction of certain stories and certain events that happen. So it's totally up to you whether or not you stick around or not. And while our rankings probably won't be that different from one another because there's only 4 stories on this list. What I will say is that even if I put your favorite story last, it's not because I didn't like it, because I really enjoyed every single story from this season. It's just because I liked the other ones even more. And with all that established, let's get started in ranking the 4 stories from Doctor Who Season 7. The Ambassadors of Death. This is a really enjoyable story. By this point in the season, it's already good, and this one just continues to deliver. There's so much interesting stuff in terms of mystery and intrigue, and the way that we're introduced to everything and how it all plays out over these 7 parts. It is hard to maintain interest for 7 parts of a story. I know there have been some serials that haven't managed to do it all that well, but this one really does a good job of introducing new elements. I think that Liz is pretty solid in this one, and the Doctor is really good as well, and they work well together, and also just seeing them get sort of more familiar with what's going on, but still not being entirely certain, as the Doctor deals with a bunch of different problems as he learns more about the situation and goes to all these different locations. It's really quite an interesting one, and I don't have a lot to say about it here, but I just found it to be thoroughly engaging. It never stepped down. I found it to be a lot of fun, really interesting, and yeah, there were a couple of aspects to it that probably could have been handled better, but on the whole, the product that we got I thought was really good. Doctor Who and the Silurians. This is a really good one. I thoroughly enjoy basically everything that you have in here. I think that the second half is a notable step up from the first half because the first half, you're really just getting introduced to the situation. You're not entirely sure about everything. And yeah, it's good and it's cool to get introduced to everything as our characters do. And there are some really strange and bizarre elements, and it's not entirely clear what direction it's headed and what exactly this one is doing. But towards the second half of the story, you get a better picture of what it is trying to do, and it does a really good job in really paying off the messages that it's trying to send in the final part of the story, which I think is really good. It definitely heads in some different directions that it doesn't always need to. Introducing a virus wasn't a necessary thing, but it did help to make things more interesting and kind of ramp up the tension towards the end. And I think they did a really good job in those final parts of making this one even more interesting and engaging with the Silurians. Once you actually get to see them and they show up on screen, then they are much more compelling than when they are just in the background of these stories. So I thought that was handled well, particularly in the final part of this one. And on the whole, this is just a really good one that gets better in the second part. Spearhead from Space. Every single time I revisit this one, I seem to like it just that little bit more. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it's entertaining, it's interesting. The Autons work effectively as villains and as an introduction to this brand new Doctor, and really just this whole new style of the show. It's all handled well. I think that Jon Pertwee does a really good job of filling in Patrick Troughton's shoes and William Hartnell's shoes before him. He is really a fresh take on the Doctor while feeling true to who the character was. I think he's quite interesting, and Pertwee does such a great job of selling him right from this first episode as very distinctive from the previous incarnations. He's really quite good, and I enjoyed the introduction to Liz Shaw, and seeing the Brigadier back was cool, and it was just a really tight, well-paced story. It gave you hints as to the problems. It allowed you to get invested in this situation as the Doctor and Liz and the Brigadier tried to figure everything out. And there is so little that I could even critique this one on because it does so much right, and it's just a thoroughly engaging post-regeneration story, and there's really very little more that I could ask for from this one because it's just a damn good serial. Inferno. It was not much of a competition for first place because this one was just that much better than the previous 3 for me. It was that good, and I really enjoyed seeing the Doctor go into this alternate reality. I am kind of a sucker for those stories, and seeing this happen sort of for the first time in the show is quite interesting. I love seeing the different versions of characters, specifically Liz Shaw, and I think that really services the story, showing how something can go wrong and motivating the Doctor even further to prevent that from happening when he gets back to his own world. And I think that's all handled really brilliantly, to be honest. And my favorite part from this entire one is episode 3, when he does go to the alternate universe, and it's just so much fun. It's really entertaining. And I basically love everything about that one. And the rest of this is good stuff too. Another 7-parter, and one that does a good job of keeping you invested throughout and bringing in all of these new elements. And again, there's very little that I would actually complain about with the story. I think there are a couple of things that aren't perfect with the mutations and some of the stuff that's going on that's just a little bit not great. But for the most part, it is really thoroughly entertaining and engaging. And as soon as you get introduced to that parallel universe, everything gets even more interesting. So yeah, I love this story, and I think it is Pertwee's best so far. And that's that. That's a pretty short ranking, but it is what it is. Only 4 stories. I really enjoyed this season, as you can tell, and I hope to see you on soon as we discuss Doctor Who Season 8. Be sure to leave your thoughts on this season down below, your ranking if you would like, or your favorite story, whatever you feel like doing. And if not, that is absolutely fine, so long as you know that I appreciate your time here today. And with all that said, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and have a lovely week.